Moving forward from the Commission's report to what's been happening at the Department of Education this week, talking about labeling a school's performance and accountability. Want to get into that. Part of what figures into that is the achievement gap that many schools face that we've been talking about. So go ahead and take a look at the struggle that one school in Lansing is having that illustrates the problems happening in other classrooms around the state.
We have students that are coming from all parts of the school district and throughout the city. And we also have students that live right across the street in the neighborhood. Demographically speaking, we have a large range of students. The minority is the majority, which makes us very unique. And we have a large African American population of about 45%.
This is Dr. Nancy Lubeski, principal at Wexford Montessori Academy, mere minutes from the downtown Michigan state capital of Lansing.
We have a large Hispanic population, right around 20%, and then we have a lot of students that are mixed races. We also have a significant number of English language learners, students that have come from Iraq, Jordan, Vietnam, and many other countries.
Good morning, Wexford Montessori.
Coming up on her 6th year at Wexford, Dr. Lubeski relishes the challenges that being principal brings.
It's the greatest adventure you might ever think of having. Every day is just a little bit different, and it's a wonderful opportunity to work with many types of students, adults, and really realizing how different people learn and exactly how I can assist and develop each and every learner.
And Randy, what are you working on?
2 years ago, Nancy received sobering news that would put her to the test. In 2014, Wexford was labeled a focus school, also known as a high achievement gap school by the state of Michigan.
I was surprised with the label. I called our district office that conducts our data and looks at our data and informs us of things. And I said, "Are you sure? Has the state made an error? Are you sure that we are one of these schools?" Yes, we looked at your data many, many times.
Wexford was one of the 10% of schools in the state with the largest achievement gap between its top and bottom 30%. It became clear to Nancy that not all of her students were getting the help they truly needed.
It was a compliment on one hand that we were high enough achieving, that we had high enough test scores, that we had this gap. But on the other hand, it wasn't such a good thing because it really demonstrated to us that our students in the bottom 30%, our students that were struggling, were not making as much progress as they could be or should be.
They've been told, you have these struggling learners, you have a high achievement gap in your school, and you should be the ones to fix it, but they didn't really have concrete practices to implement to do that.
I said, okay, now what do I need to do?
According to distinguished professor Laura Cohen-Vogel, achievement gaps like Wexford's aren't uncommon.
Achievement gaps occur between schools, but they also occur within schools. A quote-unquote high-performing school could have a very large achievement gap.
Wexford was the only school labeled as a high achievement gap school in its district. But it is one of many achievement gap schools in the state.
We now have about 130 achievement gap schools left in the state.
This is Karen Ruppel with the Michigan Department of Education.
At one time, we had over 400. These achievement gap schools have got it right for some students. So they're not low performing, but somehow their system wasn't reaching those students who were performing very poorly. We provide direct supports to our low achieving schools and our districts with low achieving schools. Given that the achievement gap designation was relatively new, we got the same pot of money to serve underperforming schools, and the identification of achievement gap schools added 400 schools to our already 200 to 300 bottom 5% schools.
Now, the school went on to try a pilot program with the help of the Michigan Department of Education. Their story is part of a larger documentary that's coming to DPTV in April. It's a co-production of DPTV and the Institute of Education Sciences Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest. But it really does kind of kick off the conversation about considering the achievement gap when you assign a school a ranking and how it fits in with other schools. So I'm going to ask you and start with you first, Amber. Are we taking the achievement gap into account enough when we start to look and to rank schools in this state?
Well, it's not clear that we're going to be ranking schools at all under the new Michigan Department of Education plan. The news just came out earlier this week that the superintendent has backed away from having any kind of rankings, even a summative rating that would give parents an idea of how their school is performing compared to other schools around the state. Instead, parents are likely to get more than 24 data points.
So why is that detrimental? That saying, well, look, we're just giving you a broad, we're giving you maybe perhaps more information than just a concrete A or F.
Or 5 stars or 1 star. Well,
Right.
one, as a parent, I'm trying to make decisions about where to send my daughter to kindergarten this fall. And I have 3 Ivy League educated analysts on my team that can do analysis for me. And I've been having a hard time trying to get clear information about school performance. So imagine for parents, right, that don't even have access to, a Michigan trained policy and data analyst, right? Imagine what that's going to be like. They're going to have no really idea. And so if you're trying to make choices about where to send your schools, especially in a place like Detroit where there are literally more than 3 dozen or more options for many parents, how do you make that decision? I mean, we won't have any clear information about that. I think that one of the other things that's really troubling is that we know that we've got some really, really major problems with holding the state accountable for performance, right? I mean, the decline in educational achievement has been going on for more than 15 years. We've been one of the weakest states in the country for holding anybody accountable for that. And essentially what the MDE is proposing is to get rid of it. I mean, they're essentially proposing to completely gut the metrics and the data and the accountability system that we could actually use, not just for traditional K-12 schools, but also for charter authorizers, right? And many on the left are concerned about that. I mean, I don't know that people realize the full extent of what the board is, the state board is
Nolan,
planning to do
confusing
now.
for parents?
Well, it's confusing. It also, clarity is always good. If somebody tells you got your school's a C, an E, a D, you get that. You understand what that means. If you've got this hodgepodge of information coming at you, you can't make the clear choices that Amber's talking about. But I think this really exposes the Michigan Department of Education, this decision by Whiston to go away from letter grades. It exposes them as a purely political body that's pulled by their special interests, by the people who fund the board candidates. I don't think that's the place to leave crucial education decisions in this state.
Stephen, when you look at what happened this week and changing minds about how we might end up labeling a school, what do you think is going to be the most advantageous for our state going forward? Should we have that letter grade?
I'm not a big fan of the letter grades. I think there are some more nuanced and sophisticated ways to evaluate schools. But I also think it's a little bit of a mask of the overall problem in places like Detroit in particular, which is that you do have a lot of different choices in Detroit, but so many of them are not quality choices. And what we probably ought to be focused on is making sure that everybody, whether you live in Detroit or Ishpeming or Lansing, has a quality choice maybe in their neighborhood. I mean, it used to be that you just sent your kid to the school that was around the corner and you were reasonably sure that they were going to get what they needed by going there. You can't do that in the city of Detroit, but you can also not do that in many other places in the state. And so the letter grade argument, I think, is a little bit of a distraction from the overall quality itself and making sure, why would you need letter grades, frankly, if everybody had a quality school in their neighborhood?
Is that really possible for everybody to have a quality school in their neighborhood, Chastity? Is that the goal that we just need to get to, but it's going to take years?
Absolutely. This moving away from A to F is, again, Michigan not doing what good states are doing just the opposite. I mean, the commission report said something really important. We're basically last in the nation as far as student progress. In the last 15 years, every other state has improved. Michigan has not. We've stayed the same, which means now we're 50th in terms of student progress. So why not do what other good states are doing? Other good states are rating their schools, are ranking them, giving them A through F, speaking the language that parents understand. Parents understand A through F. When you're looking for a school, you understand what it means to have a B. You don't understand all these different points in educational jargon. So it's politics taking a front seat at a time when the state cannot afford it.
All right, we have 1 minute left here. I know we could go on for a really long time, but I'm going to ask each one of you the same question if you just keep your answer limited. So now what's the next step? Taking this out of this report, what do you think, to see happen next, Nolan?
Well, I'd like to see the legislature put a ballot measure on in 18 that eliminates the state school board, puts it under the governor, so you have one accountable official.
All right, Stephen?
I think we got to get from reports to action, and that means leadership, and I think that's got to come from the governor's office. It hasn't so far.
Chastity?
The legislature has to pony up more money for schools, especially schools that aren't doing well.
All right, and Amber, last word.
I think we do have a leadership gap. There's a serious void, and it needs to step up now. We do need to spend more, but we also need to hold schools accountable, and that means we need honest information. And those decisions are being made now. We can't wait for decisions to be made about the state board's governance, right? Those decisions are happening in the next month.
I appreciate the conversation. It was a good one. We're going to keep having them. Amber Ariano, Chastity Pratt-Jazzy, of course, Nolan Finley, and Stephen Henderson. Thanks so much for joining us. That'll do it for MiWeek. We will see you next time. Take care.